Hey, North Carolina DECA, welcome back to the NC DECA Toolbox series. My name is Ron Petluri and I am your association president. Today, we're going to be hearing some roleplay and case study tips from ICDC first place winner Harshu Thummala. Let's get into it. All right, NC DECA, we are here with Harshu Thummala. Harshu, go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe some of your ICDC and competition credentials.
My name is Harshu Thummala, and I'm a senior at Apex Friendship High School. And this past year, I won first place in Principles of Hospitality and Tourism at ICDC. And today, I'm going to be sharing with you some of the tips that I use to achieve this.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Harshu actually placed first at regionals, states, and internationals in his first year, so I'm sure he's got some good tips for us. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions. To start off, how would you approach selecting an event?
Yeah, of course. So selecting your event, the very first thing that you have to do is incredibly important because I see some people try to choose role plays that are less competitive or might have less people. However, I strongly suggest that you choose a role play that aligns with your own personal strengths and what career field you want to go into. So, for example, you wouldn't choose something in the finance cluster if your dream job is to be the CEO of a hotel chain, right? So, again, don't just choose events that you feel like would be the easiest because you're eventually going to lose motivation and you won't be able to work as hard in order to win in those events.
Yep, that definitely makes sense. My next question for you is, how do you approach a role play? They give you 10 minutes. How do you kind of split up your time?
Yeah, of course. So the biggest thing that I see people trip up on in role plays is not having like a predefined roadmap of what they're going to say. So if you get in there and you feel a little bit lost, this is going to be the perfect thing for you. And it's actually what I used at ICDC. So I essentially have my own formula where I have a piece of paper and I fold it in half. And for each side of the paper, four in total, I have a visual aid for every single performance indicator. And this essentially just helps me throughout my role plays know exactly what to do next. I talk about this performance indicator, then I move on to the next one. However, this is just a formula that works for me. And in my opinion, or it would be most beneficial if you came up with your own formula that's most suitable to your personal strengths and weaknesses so that you can account for them best and succeed.
I definitely agree with that. With a role play,
Mhm.
you kind of think that it's unprepared, but if you're able to come in with some sort of prepared idea, that helps out. Next up, the test is a big scare off for a lot of people with these role play and case study events. How do you improve your test scores?
Yeah, so a thing about the test is that most people, when they aim to improve their test scores, just retake DECA tests that they find online over and over and over again. However, the best way to improve is to actually review your answers and mistakes so that you can see what you need to improve on, right? Because reviewing your tests is at least 50% of the work. And something that most people might want to know is that every single DECA question on tests are actually connected to a specific performance indicators. So if you go through your past tests and see which questions you've missed, you can see if there's a certain performance indicator that you've been missing more often so that you could target that and study specifically for it. And through that, you'll eventually cover your weak areas and become better at the test.
Super cool. Yeah, no. Next up, talking about the actual competitions that people will face. What could you do to prepare for competitions like districts or states?
Yeah, so something that a lot of people might want to know going into districts is that your instructional area or what the role play is going to be about is actually predetermined, right? So they're going to announce district instructional areas beforehand, which you can find on the DECA website. And one example of this is, for example, for PHT, they're going to release which specific category you're going to be solving. So it could be customer relations, it could be financial problems, or it could be anything else. But really knowing this instruction area before you go in is going to help you be the most prepared so you can review these prompts before you go in.
Super cool. And then next up, talking about the big dog ICDC. How did you prepare for ICDC? Are there any specific tips you have?
Yeah, so the ICDC test is much harder than the states test, in my opinion, because they contain a more nuanced mix of questions from different instructional areas. So something that I would advise people going to ICDC to do is to ask their advisors for DECA tests because these ICDC tests are usually not available online and sometimes are also locked behind a paywall. But your wonderful DECA advisors often have ICDC materials like tests and role plays that you can use to aid in your study.
Sure. And then finally, just to sum everything up, what is the most important part of a role play or case study?
So you guys might have heard this a million times before, but performance indicators are the most important part. However, there's another thing that you must keep in mind, which is the original prompt. So, for example, if your role play scenario is a customer asking you about a possible dispute or issue, you're not just going to go down the list explaining the performance indicators to the customer. You want to also answer the original prompt, which is to correctly answer the customer issues. So, yeah, know your rubric and explain the performance indicators, but also respond to the prompt for the best role play.
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely important to, also hit on each performance indicator and hit on what the rubric needs while tending to the prompt and making sure you cover the actual question that they're asking you. Because your role play isn't just a rubric, it is also an actual question. It is also an actual scenario that they want to see solved. So, with all of that said, thank you so much for coming on here, Harshu. We really appreciate it, and I hope these
Yeah,
tips
of course.
out.
All right. It's been great.